join Greg and Richard right here on Talking Red. Hello and welcome to Talking Reds and Nottingham Forest podcast. I'm Greg Oram, and of course, with me is my podcast partner, Mr. Richard Spray. With us on the panel, we are with Raf, the Random Pundit. Now then, there aren't many times when I'm lost for words watching Nottingham Forest. Standing in the crowd at the City Ground for the defeat of Midtjylland was one of those occasions. And last night, watching the debacle in Braga unfold on my television screen was another. Anger, frustration, despair, confusion, pick an adjective. Losing 1-0 to a team who failed to register a shot on target for the entire game is, of course, pure Nottingham Forest. And we'll try for the first part of this episode to reflect on the match and what it might mean for the Reds as the fixtures keep on coming. If Forrest were a comic strip character, there'd definitely be Harvey Two-Face, as you're never quite sure what you're going to get. The inconsistencies are there for us all to see. And with the trip to Brentford on Sunday as crucial and important now than it ever was, can Forest bounce back from the epic fail of failures?
So Forest here in Braga with 2 Europa League games left to play and with a chance of a top 8 finish that would have... And it's saved! Gannon Doyle, they can't get there. Now with Ricardo Horta, and he's got for a flimsy challenge and pulled it back, and it's another goal! It's coming off Ryan Yates! The penalty save, Braga go to the other end, and the Forest captain Ryan Yates scores an own goal. He's given a straight red card to Elliot Anderson.
In a nutshell, that's pretty much it. I'm kind of lost for words, guys, as I'm sure you are as well. Get it off your chest in the comments if you're with us on the live by, spilling out the fury. We've already had one or two that have jumped in early. I'll say a quick good morning to Wolfie from Forest Fan TV, who's just in a fury saying, sack him now. That may well come to pass. We can talk about that as we get into this episode. Liking and subscribing and all that kind of stuff helps us out. Please go ahead and hit the necessary buttons wherever you are watching or listening. All right. Good morning, Richard. We have all slept on it, and sometimes that does help. How are you feeling? Can you sum it up?
Well, it didn't help me. I can tell you that right now, unfortunately. And I apologize to everyone in advance because I don't want this to be lost on anyone. I love Nottingham Forest with my entire soul, my entire being. Okay, so please don't forget that. But look, one of my favorite movies of all time is Remember the Titans. And there's a point in that movie where Coach Yost says, we are going to blitz them all night. We are not going to give them another yard. Where is that mentality with how we play? That was the calling card of Sean Dyche. To Wolfie's point, that was his calling card, right? Stability, defensive solidity, just playing sound football. It may not be the prettiest at all times. It may not be the thing that you can liken to anything aesthetically pleasing, but it was solid. And I just feel like there's just this like malaise. There's just like collective malaise and a lack of individuals choosing to play at a certain level. Because there was nothing about that. Forgive me, I know I'm going off here and I'm monologuing, but there was nothing about that said Premier League to me. None of it. And I just don't understand why we continue to play below the standard. It doesn't make any sense to me. And I will say the last couple of things are, what fear factor do we present? When a team plays Nottingham Forest, what do they say? Oh my gosh, we're going to have to account for X, Y, or Z. Or Z, excuse me, in English nomenclature or vernacular. Where is that? Right. And that's the thing I don't understand with all of the, lauding the recruiting and all the players we bought and all the talent. Like you said, Greg, we can't possibly say anymore that, Dyche is playing with the best quality players he's coaching the best quality players he's ever coached. Because at this stage, it's not evident. And I would just say there's just a lack of leadership. There's a lack of killer instinct. There's just this generally like being acted upon instead of acting. And frankly, I can see why we have just sort of cornered the market and being even more inconsistent this season than we have in seasons past, which blows my mind considering what we saw last season. I know a lot of the dynamics have shifted. I understand we didn't have a true number 9. I understand we were without certain players like Chris Wood. All of that is true, but in the end, people have to step up. These are Premier League quality players they're there that should be, and we're just not seeing any of it. And frankly, I could see why the fan base is fed up, because I'm fed up. And I just think you're dishonoring, frankly, those who are making the time, spending their money, coming all the way to Braga, and that's what you provide them. To me, that's unacceptable.
Good morning to Steph. She says, can't actually say good morning because it isn't. That was just an horrific match. Brucey from Texas says, good morning, all. Popcorn at the ready. Our good friend Pat Brett says, Deitch is a dinosaur. The team are a disgrace. Ads with us, looking to get our opinion on Deitch's constant magic dust. We're only here to guide the players' remarks. For me, it confirms he literally has no idea how to manage this group of players. So Deitch getting flack from all corners as well. Tricky Mickey, abysmal performance, awful again. 1 win in 8 now. Where do Forest go from here? There's lots and lots of anger around, Raf. And on Richard's point, I know I popped into our group chat, this so-called line that comes out, Sean Deitch has never had a squad as good as this to manage. We're surely going to see him now, test his managerial skills. They're not the best squad. The depth is horrific. We thought we were getting an upgrade. We've been hoodwinked, haven't we, Raf? How are you feeling this morning, mate?
Right. So to put some context, I'm a bit gruff. I really don't like going to bed mad or angry or anything else as well. It was a very good piece of advice that was given to me when I was younger. And I needed to stay up, and I was working until 4 o'clock in the morning just to let the anger subside so I could go to bed with a bit more of a clear head, which is why I don't have a clear head now. But that's how bad it was and how long it took for the anger to subside. I put a piece out on X where I am not jumping all over the new players, especially the ones that have come from abroad. I do think it takes some time for them to bed in. I will come on to, I don't think they're all to blame. And I actually think some of the old players that were part of that unbelievably mint side were part of the problem yesterday, not necessarily the new players as well. And when you get to that, we'll come on to a specific part of the game when we go through it. But I lost Deitch for the first time yesterday. I was going, let's just see how it goes. Actually, it's not so bad. It was pretty much the 2 Everton games at the outliers. Fulham was a bit of an anomaly because they didn't turn up, but it was really the Everton games. Other than that, things are all right. And then we see what I think is gross mismanagement yesterday. Gross mismanagement. Now, I know the players haven't necessarily helped him, but let's get into why that might be the case as well. And there's certain things that I've said in prior pods where I take no pleasure in saying we're now seeing the comeuppance of said events as we go through. But I do have some silver linings for the end, which hopefully will pick us up to go, it's not all lost. And maybe when I say gross mismanagement, I might be giving them too much credit, but there might have been a method to the madness of what they've just done now in terms of selection and subs and everything else as well, when to me it seems baffling.
Brucey wants to mention that he's pissed off whoever decided to hire Ange and follow it up with Sean Deitch. James says, West Ham will overtake us in the next 4 games. Anyone want to bet against me? Well, I'm not quite sure there's many want to take that bet. Thanks very much for the £2 donation from Mark. Should have started the game with a stronger lineup. That's an interesting point. My dad's in the comments. Alan says, if you want to win, play your strongest team to start. Thanks for your comment, Dad. Appreciate that. He's got a point, isn't he? Both of them have got a point about playing his strong team from the start. I mean, we pick our teams, Richard, in the preview. And I think I mentioned, well, maybe we should start with the strongest guys, get a goal, maybe 2, and then sort of make the rest. Because ultimately, that first 11 that started yesterday did not perform, and it looked like they were never going to score a goal in a million years. So take us back to team selection. We've got no striker fit to play, which we knew about 24 hours before. Dan Ndoye goes into the sort of number 9 role, if you like. That, in my eyes, didn't work out. He just didn't know how to operate in that role. He didn't know how to get into the correct space. And it just felt like we were really disjointed up top. And you've got a Braga side that play with such low tempo. Fletch said it in commentary. We come down to their level. And so no one's taking the game by the scruff of the neck. You got Douglas Luiz that should be doing that, not doing that. Fair enough to Morgan. He was the more lively of the players, I felt, without being anything special. We had mistakes happening at right back with Savona. It was a bit of a shit show, wasn't it? I mean, were you happy with the team? Because I've got to be honest with you, when the team came out, hand on heart, I was like, okay, that's pretty much what I probably would have gone with. You know, reflections and hindsight's a wonderful thing. So you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't on team selection, aren't you?
Absolutely. Well, and it's to Raf's point that, you know, there's some moments where you can go, okay, we're nitpicking a bit when it comes to substitutions, and maybe in situations like this one, it maybe felt like it was more obvious coming out of halftime because there was no energy, there was no intent, there was no creativity or industry in how anyone was performing. I mean, you got, you know, McAtee playing somewhat okay. I mean, it wasn't spectacular. He certainly made moments happen. And he was integral in a couple of things, but
the first 20 minutes or so. Richard.
Well, that's what I mean. Is that like he's not really inserting himself in a way, but that's not necessarily that wasn't completely lost on the majority of the players. And players like Savona, you could point to different matches, like against Manchester United, for example. There's been matches where he's played to that level that we're used to seeing against them and against opposition that we know is superior. I mean, these guys are 5th in the Portuguese league. It's not like we're dealing with somebody that's elite. So, and to your point, they really weren't making an effort to really stress us in any way, in any particular area of the pitch. There's times on the counter where we looked a little bit suspect, right? We were giving ourselves we're giving them too much space. I mean, I think it was mentioned yesterday on Force Focus that, you know, Ryan Yates kept drifting over to sort of fullback areas instead of, you know, operating in that middle and clogging up that middle. I wasn't upset about it because I don't think it was too far of a departure from what we were thinking might happen, but it was just the fact that there was something going on with each individual player where none of them were singing from the same song sheet as it relates to, you know, a commitment to a plan. I mean, I don't know what the plan was, to be candid. I don't understand. It just felt like everybody was coming in with the same lack of commitment to a higher standard of performance. And so I know I'm kind of being repetitive with that word standard and performance, but I just didn't know what I was seeing. And it felt like even these players that, yeah, exactly. As it says on the screen right now, we don't work on favorites. This is from Sean Dyche. We work on us performing to go and win the game. It's about our mentality to come here, take on the game and play with freedom. None of that was evident at all. And so you could say that some of these players are certainly the quote unquote B team. They're not quite the same level as what our starters are. And you've seen that in games like Wrexham, for example, where the first teams that's out there, which is part of the B team, is setting a poor standard, and they're playing down to the competition. And then the starters come in at halftime and then they elevate everything. But you still expect players such as Savona and them who have shown flashes of that in the Premier League to operate it at a level that we know they're capable of, and none of that was happening. So, yeah, in hindsight, the team selection looked poor, but in reality, when it came out, I was with you. I wasn't sitting there with a lot of fear and trepidation. I really thought we would put in a little bit more of a performance, but it just never materialized, unfortunately.
I mean, the facts are
it creates more questions than answers, unfortunately.
Yeah, the facts are that team that played should have been going into Braga with more tempo, with more pace, with more endeavour, with more intensity. And Braga just didn't look like they wanted to threat our goal. We know they didn't have a shot on goal the whole game. You know, we almost got a sting in the tail at the end of the first half when Savona lets his guy get the free header in. I mean, that was whiskers away from us going 1-0 down then. So you get the scare. The only thing that of note that we could conjure up with was the Morgan Gibbs-White free kick that he managed to get on target. I mean, that in itself was a positive because he normally blazes over the bar. Why Douglas Luiz is not on free kicks and, of course, penalties, which we'll come to, is beyond me. But it was all kind of like moving towards one of those games in Europe, Raf, where maybe the selection was wrong, the tactics were wrong, everything was wrong. You can talk about the rain. And I want to quickly, before I come to you, Raf, interject this. Everyone knows that Lorenzo Luca has more or less signed to join on loan from Napoli. In the last hour or so, maybe you've seen this. Peter Rourke, who is a reporter, he's reporting that he's hearing Forest are now concerned that Chris Wood will be ruled out for the whole season with that knee injury. Probably confirming something that we all knew. We all kind of said we're probably not going to see him again, but now it's kind of like being dripped out. It was seen from the club that, yeah, this is bad. He's out. So is Lorenzo Luca enough? Are we going to have another striker coming, Raf? Is there anything you can say of a positive sense from last night and that first half?
Well, first half, overall, can I see anything positive coming from that? Well, kind of yes. And I'll say why, right? And this will loop back, as the guys know what to do, is at the moment, there are a few things that I see where Dyche talks about keeping it simple, but I actually think they're overcomplicating whatever they're teaching them because there's not a real clarity in purpose of what we're doing. With Nuno, it was very simple. You defend, you turn the ball over, and you move from front to back rapidly, traveling with the ball, and you either go through the middle or you go through the side, you cross it across into the box, and everyone floods the box and puts it in the back of the net. Simple. And it works, right? Here, I don't know what we're doing, other than launching a ball forward. But when we don't have someone up top to be able to do that, and in a microcosm, you look at the end of the game, we need a goal. And we're just passing it around the back four, which I've never seen us do beforehand anyway, really like that for such an amount of time. At that juncture, we'd actually moved to a 4-3-3. Hallelujah. It only took 90 minutes to basically do that. But we had three midfielders on. And yet we have still got no mechanism to be able to get that ball from the defenders to three midfielders that are there, other than a midfielder having to drop all the way back to where the central defenders are to pick the ball up and then still have the same problem. So for me, that is a massive management fail right then and there. And you can't keep blaming your tools for that. All these players have excelled somewhere where they have been. We're not putting players on that we're going, oh, we've never seen them play well beforehand, and it's a completely unknown entity. So this is now on management. But could it be a lot different with a striker on? This is what I'm getting to. So if the idea is to put balls in the box or whatever it might be, it might work when we've got a true focal point like we had with Wood. Because bless his heart, Jesus is just not programmed. He hasn't been trained enough to be able to have the expertise that Wood has with a decade more experience in being a fox in the box. Now, if you look at yesterday's game, we're not a million miles away from that. And I'm going to go out on a limb. I can get pelters. McAtee was the most productive person on the pitch yesterday. He didn't do loads, but what he did made massive amounts of difference. He zipped a ball inch perfect across the 6-yard box. If we had a recognised 9, that would have been a goal. If Wood had been playing, that would have been a goal. Assist number 1. He was the one that got fouled for the penalty. Questionable or not, do you get assist for it? But for me, Morgan Gibbs-White sticks that away. That's assist number 2 for 2 goals. Then he slips Morgan Gibbs-White through 10 yards out on his favoured foot, right in front of the goal, the whole goal to aim for, and he puts it into Rosette. That, big chance, should have been a goal. That's 3 assists McAtee should have had yesterday. So if anyone wants to pan him, I'm sorry, but you can see the fact that he was actually trying, and he was the one with a bit of quality yesterday. And if we had a recognised striker who is that one in the box to one, put it in the 6-yard box, put it in, take the penalty, be the one being slipped through to then finish off, we could have had 3 goals, all from him with a recognised striker. So no, it's not the end of the world. But to that end, and I'm very quickly do this because I know I've been talking for a while, very simply, this is where Sean Dyche is overcomplicating things, I imagine. If we have the legend, the big man, back in the dugout, okay, he could have spent 15 seconds with the whole team and managed to get a win. He liked keeping things simple. All he would have done is in front of everyone, take Dan and Doy aside and just go, young lad, Your one job is to get yourself into that box. That's it. If you'd just done that as the only thing you'd said in the dressing room, we'd have probably won that game.
Invoking Brian Clough on this podcast was a joy to hear. Thank you very much for that, Raf. But you're right. I mean, positionally, Dan Ndoye wasn't able to take up the right kind of spaces. So that really held us back. And so you're right, with a focal point coming in Lorenzo Luca, maybe we'll see the benefit. And you, in fairness as well, you put the case forward for McAtee really well. I guess I was kind of like thinking quite negatively about him because that's the habit. But, you make the case quite well for those moments. And in and amongst a performance where everything just felt like it was going wrong, we go into the second half and get the penalty, Richard, kind of out of nothing. And the referee gave it straight away. And so it was in my mind, it wasn't going to get overturned. But lo and behold, I just knew it. I knew it. I was at West Ham and Raf was there as well, when Gibbs White stepped up to take the penalty. He scored that. I thought, and that kind of made me think, okay, well, he's had a pressure penalty recently. The Sturm Graz thing surely has been well and truly erased from memory. All it is now a case of just striking this ball really sweetly and scoring the goal. But he failed to do it again. Surely that's the end of Gibbs White and penalties now, Richard.
You would think so, because when we saw in the first couple of seasons when he tried to take free kicks, now granted he came back recently and obviously took the free kick in that match when Luis was on the pitch, so maybe I'm wrong in saying this, but it kind of makes me think of, Raf may know this because he's a big fan of American football, Brucey and others from US who watch American football, they refer to it in quarterback play as placing the ball. And what that means is you don't have velocity, you don't have the right trajectory, and you don't have confidence in that ball leaving your hand. I think that's more often than not why none of us have belief when he steps up, that ball is going in. Because when you watch, I understand Harry Kane is like a world-class, legendary striker, right? I mean, it is his job to put the ball in the back of the net, and he's done it brilliantly. But even Chris Wood or Elliot Anderson or even Callum Hudson-Odoi, watch when Callum Hudson-Odoi takes a penalty. He comes up there with a very specific plan, and he executes it. Whereas Morgan just seems like he doesn't believe he's going to score. And so he just kind of tries to take the safe route and just sort of use the inside of his foot and place it. And there's no power. There's nothing. It just makes it too easy for the opposing keeper. And I just feel like that's his MO in a nutshell when it comes to how he shoots in general. It's just, it's a hope and a prayer that it's going to go in. And, thankfully it went in against West Ham. But to your point, that was an aberration. We walk into that moment. He walks in that moment believing it's not going to happen. Right. And so at least with the Sturm Graz match, it was a better performance. We just couldn't finish. And he was at the heart of that. But as I said on our WhatsApp group, if you're going to put someone in a captain seat, and maybe I will get flack for this, if you're going to put someone in that captain seat, they better be consistent. They better be a leader, and they better give you what is needed in the moment when it matters most. And I'm sorry to say this, I have defended him with every breath that I've had, but I just don't see it anymore. He doesn't look like the guy who leads this team when we are down in the doldrums to bring us out of that. And we need that desperately. That's where Chris Wood becomes essential. And we just don't have it right now. Even Ryan Yates on the pitch last night, which is unfortunate that he made the error that he did that led to their goal. But even he was a little bit off. Aina wasn't necessarily locked in and being all Aina either. I mean, there's just certain players that you expect to perform at a certain.
Lenkovic was all over.
Exactly. I mean, everyone was a bit off. A degree or two off in a multitude of facets. And I just think that's when you don't have the people that you can rely on the most with the most consistent performances, performing at even at a 6.5 out of 10, you're gonna lose the game. And it's just unfortunate.
Just 4 players there.
Mm-hmm.
But were
that are all
that Apex team.
I get
last year.
You
we
bet.
Didn't name a new player in there.
Right.
Those are 4 players from last year.
But imagine what that does to the rest of the team when they're not used to playing as much. They're going to rely on them to help buoy them up, right? Or buoy them up, however we say it in the UK. Because I've been given crap about saying it that way. Yes, there you go. That's G them up. G them up. Who's going to G them up? I just don't see it right now. And there's definitely players on. I agree with you. That's my point. I agree with you. That's the it's not just the lack of finishing, although he is the leading goal scorer on the team right now. Well, at least in Premier League. It doesn't make any sense to me why that's lacking. And you would think after being given a new contract, boost of confidence, belief that he's going to be the guy again, our talismanic figures now for me were Chris Wood and Anthony Elanga, and they're not here anymore. Because who else is it? Even Anderson, right? I mean, it was just a comedy of errors between missing open opportunities and penalties and goals in front of, or shots in front of goal, getting an own goal, which was their only positive thing for them all night, and they didn't even generate it. And then lastly to get a red card. I mean, it was just a perpetual degrading of and just drifting towards ineptitude. And it's just, oh my gosh, it's hard to even negotiate, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Tricky Mickey says last night looked like a pre-season friendly, no fight, no ambition, very poor. And it really was a question that I want to ask you guys about these fringe players. I've said that this doesn't really actually seem like it is the best squad Sean Dyche has ever had. On paper, some might say, but when you got Bakwa, who hasn't done anything in a Forest shirt, and Ndoye, who's done very little in a Forest shirt, McAtee, who's done nothing in a Forest shirt, Callum Mwende came and went. Igor Jesus has kind of like done a little bit. Douglas Luiz looked like he was going to be the kind of signing we hoped he would be, but he just doesn't look interested anymore. There's so many players that are on paper really good, strong signings, and we spent a lot of money on these players, but they're coming in, and how much is it that they're not getting enough game time, so therefore they're a bit match rusty, and so therefore their fitness levels aren't what they should be, and how much is it that actually those kind of changes mean that there's going to be a lack of cohesion in the way that we play, the way we set up. Players not quite sure what they're doing. Maybe their job hasn't been clearly defined to them, as Raf was alluding to, that Brian Clough would always make sure that people knew what their job was. Your job is to do this. Give it to someone better. He can play. You can't. Win the ball back. That's what your job is. And then give it to him. That kind of thing. Whereas the disjointedness must stem surely, Raf, from the fringe players not getting enough game time, so therefore they're not fit, therefore they're not cohesive enough. And also maybe, is it that, I'm not having this management team, they can sod off, I'm not going to put it in for them. Is that a factor, do you think? Are the players now stopping playing for the management team?
Right, that's a massive statement, of which we'll kind of round out on that at the end of maybe are we getting close to that? But before we get there, there's something that I put out, I think yesterday or the day before, because I was seeing a lot of slating of these new players, which is kind of the rhetoric that's going on right now. And I do really, really feel for them, because other than Douglas Luiz, who has played here before, McAtee, who's played here before, the majority of everyone else that's been brought in is coming from abroad, having never played in the UK, in the Premier League before. Then in the first couple of months, they have 3 different managers that are all giving them completely different directives as to how to play, how to train, what their job is. And then you've got no consistency, and you're also trying to adjust to the Premier League and culture and everything else as well. Mangala, there are loads of players that we've had that took a season to get underneath themselves before we really saw the best of them. So is it the players' fault? Is it actually the club's fault for buying all of these players in a mass change and expecting them to all hit the ground like Murillo and maybe Milenkovic? But again, defence is an easier job. You've got a 180 view of field, not a 360 in the middle of the pitch. It's an easier thing to adapt to when you first come in. So I'm not going to throw the players under the bus. Dan Ndoye, we saw under Nuno, he played really well. It's just trying to figure out and unlocking them, play him in the right way, right? If we look at McAtee, he had his best game so far last game. And like I said, everything that we talk about Morgan Gibbs-White, why is he on the pitch? He's the creative spark. He's the one that can make something out of nothing and create opportunities. That wasn't him yesterday. That was McAtee. Morgan Gibbs-White does it. He gets lauded like a god. McAtee does it in a game and everyone's still hating on him. I just don't get it. It's biased like I've never seen, right? And so actually it's not a complete shit show of all these new players. Savona, like we've said, has done well. It's just he's not very good against pace. He got rinsed by Martinez all of last night and their threats were coming by him. And again, we double back to not the players, but management. At half time, their manager took off Niakate, that liability of a centre-back that they had. At half time, we did sweet FA to fix that problem of Savona against Martinez. And then, when we move on to it, not blaming the players again, management, substitutes came along. Right, substitutes. I think it was Brucey in the comments who said, right, these players are coming on. I thought were the three players that are coming on. They were the three that are coming on, right? And I think we're all in conjunction of which three were going to come on. It was then a question of who comes off. And this is the moment I lost Dyche completely. All my faith was gone. And it's like, right, who do we think? And Brucey and I came up with the same list, right? You get off Savona because he's being killed, right? I know Aim's not having a great game, but put him on the right-hand side, get Nico on, right? Absolutely fine. Shore up the defence. Right, get Yates off. We need energy in midfield. Get Anderson on, or Dominguez or someone, but get Anderson on, get some energy, get Luiz and Anderson and take control of this game in midfield. And get Bakwa off, right? It sucks, but McAtee's playing miles better than him. Get Bakwa off and put Callum put Callum on, right? 0 out of 3. 0 out of 3. He took Ola off, not Savona. He took Yates off, right? Who did he take? No, he took Luiz off, not Yates. And he took McAtee off, not Bakwa. And that's the one that ground my gears the most. And at that stage, you just go, dude, have you got a clue? Can you see what's in front of you? Again, I'm not a manager. He is. And I'll come right at the end of maybe why he's doing what he's doing. But I think piling on the players when there's no strategy, you're not backing them up by helping them, by seeing what the problem is and putting the players on that can do that job for you, playing players out of position. It's really harsh to pile on the players, and I'm not going to have a go at them.
Pat thinks you're wrong. He says the signings have been crap, so that's his opinion. I think that it's a bit of both. My opinion is that, you know, the new players that have come in haven't reached the levels that we need them to reach. And like I said, that is a mixture of them not getting the game time, not being trusted, you know, but at the same time, they train. They're not catching the eye clearly in those training sessions. When it came to Callum Mwendo before he left the club and others, Dyche said, look, you know, I see these people in training, and he was kind of lacing it into his interview that, look, if people aren't performing in training, then they're not going to get into my thinking. It looks like the team is more or less
put the ball in the back of the net. But they're the one player that can put the ball in the back of the net, and it's crescendoing. He scored in his last 2 games. He can put the ball in the back of the net, but I don't like how he trains. Let's get him out of the club. Well,
I agree with you that, and we can all agree or disagree on lots of different things, but I think everyone's in tune when it comes to letting Callum Mwendo go before we've got another striker coming in, because obviously it unravelled last night. We didn't have that focal point, and in Europe, it looked like he was just getting going. I mean, the way that he played against Utrecht, you know, was, I thought, pretty good. I thought the way he took his goal was excellent. So we know about that, but on the whole, with all those signings coming in, the money we paid for them, you know, it's not even a 5 out of 10 as a recruitment kind of like number. If you look at all the players, the second half, and we got the Brentford game to preview as well, so we're going to get to that in a minute. But just to kind of wrap this game up, the second half we know unfolded like it did. We hit the bar, they hit the post. You know, they scored 54 seconds after the penalties missed. We've talked about the fragility of some of the players. I mean, Bakwa sticking his leg out when they broke was ridiculous. Milenkovic getting walked through was just not what I expected to see from him. I don't think Yates could get his feet out of the way. You know, he's taken the blame for it, but it was just a comedy of errors that happened. And then when you bring in the players on to try and get you back into the game, they just couldn't hit the heights or the levels that we saw them do against Wrexham when we got back to 3-3. It just wasn't happening. And there was another call for a penalty. Just quickly, Richard, because we got times against us to wrap the game up. Dan Ndoye, do you think that should have been a penalty? Could you see it given? Referees no quite quickly.
I mean, I was hard. It was hard to see a lot of contact in that. I think somebody in our WhatsApp group said maybe like his back or his bum may have been responsible for you know, colliding with him a bit. But yeah, it didn't seem to me like there was enough there. It probably looked a little too much like a dive in my estimation. But would I have been upset obviously if we got it? Clearly not. Would I have been confident that we would have scored it? Probably not. But I think it's definitely one of those moments where you look back and go, it's just, that's so irrelevant, honestly, to the context of the remainder of the match, because ultimately we wouldn't have had to rely on that if we had done our job, to Raf's point, on the 3 primary instances where we should have scored goals. And so, it is what it is. I don't fixate it on as much because I'm too concerned and too focused on everything else that didn't go right prior to that.
From the start, from 68 minutes, we basically had our first team on. Other than Savona, Ola, and a striker, that's our first team that was on. They had
a situation
25 minutes as the first team against, across all the pods, a very respected people are calling the quality of the Europa League championship level. But with our first team pretty much on against a championship side, we can't raise our level to score 1 goal in 25 minutes against a championship side, right? Well, when you've got to have impetus behind you because you're behind, and you should have absolute hellfire going on, and you flooding forward and needing to get it. So why not?
No, you can't say that. You can't say that you can't rely on these players that are sat on the bench to come on. Okay, I agree with you. The players that come on are better than what was on the pitch, but you've got to get into the game. It's not because it's football doesn't work that way. It can't just be to go, well, look, you're our best players. You go on and score a goal because you're better than them. Braga had started
to become at Wrexham, put them on, scored loads of goals.
Hang on a second. Braga had become more savvy in that game. The substitution of Moutinho on, where he was sitting, helped them as well. They almost caught us on the break 2 or 3 times. We still weren't operating at the level that we would want them to operate at. And I can hardly blame some of the players coming on. In an ideal world, they come on and we wave the magic dust. You did it against Wrexham and go and do it again. It just doesn't work that way in football, unfortunately. I wish it did, but the Wrexham game was a bit different because I think the conditions were different, the crowd was different, the atmosphere was different. Last night, I'm not trying to sound like Sean Dyche because I know he's lent into the conditions of the game as well, and I kind of think that you shouldn't be doing that. But to say that, look, with 25 minutes to go, you get more or less your first team players on, and therefore, hey presto, we score a goal. I just don't think football works that way.
But we had more fans than them.
And I hear where you're at, Greg. I get it. But let me say this. We've played better defensive teams, and we've had more than double the number of touches in their box.
We haven't been cutting teams open, guys. Our problem in recent games is we've got no cut and thrust going forward. Going forward, we are not incisive. We are not carving teams open. We are the lowest scorers in the Premier League apart from Wolves, even with a striker. We are not cutting teams open. We are not scoring enough goals. So the only way we were going to get a goal last night was that fucking penalty, which we missed. I mean, come on. Let's wake up and smell the coffee, guys. We are fucking awful going forwards. We don't score goals. That's the problem. Whether that's the players or whether that's the management or a combination of both.
I'm sure it is, because you can see that if they're not into it, either they're not, to your point, that's the question. Are they not buying the plan? Are they not buying the voice exit or explaining the plan? Because there's a disconnect somewhere from the top down to the players. They're not, and then they're in their heads and they're not operating at the same speed that they need to in order to be effective. You're right, Greg. I mean, we're not utilizing the talent in our midfield that we have. The fact that Elliot Anderson's barely penetrating the box throughout that time that he comes on is not how he functions. So it just doesn't make any sense. And that tells me that either Dyche doesn't know what he's doing or they're not listening. And if they are listening, they don't really know what to do because they don't feel like it's an effective plan. And they're just not really doing it at the rate and with any urgency. Does that make sense? I don't know. There's just disconnect.
We can't have another manager.
I agree with you.
When we reviewed the game on Sunday against Arsenal, Raf hit the nail on the head when we talked about the team from last season. Look at the team looking like the team from last season. And Raf said, we did, but more defensive than anything else. We kind of unlocked that defense from last year solidity. And Jota Silva talked about it in this. He was quoted in an article when he says, when you do something as special as we did, the people start to think we can do something even better now. This is Jota Silva from our last season player. He says, sometimes it's not like that. Pieces can change. When you change coaches, things cannot be stable. But I saw the game against Arsenal on television. It was like watching the team from last season. It's not just about quality. That is not what I'm talking about. It's about attitude. And I think that kind of sums it up. Jota Silva sums it up perfectly. It's got to do with attitude and commitment and drive.
Agreed.
And also defensively, like Raf says, we seem like against Arsenal, we were, back to what we can be. But it's that going forwards, unlocking and cutting teams open part. We just struggle to do it.
But is it because we don't know how to do it and we don't have the capability of doing it, we don't have the quality to do it, or is it a choice that we're making? Because that quote to me says last week against the best team in the Premier League right now, we did it. Against a championship level fifth team in the Portuguese league, we don't even give a shit.
We didn't do it. He's not saying we did it against Arsenal. He's saying that we did it.
No, you just said the solidity, the commitment to the attitude, the willingness. Right. That wasn't there this week. Okay, so that's what I'm saying. I don't understand that. I don't.
Which this is where Dyche's own words come back to bite him in the ass, because he has said when, about the big games and you do well against, you play well against Man City, beat Liverpool, beat Spurs, all of these types of things. And he goes, well, the big games take care of themselves. That soundbite is going to get etched absolutely everywhere, right? So he's openly said he doesn't really need to do very much to get the players up for those games. But it's all the other games where he's earning his big bucks that he's paid to be able to motivate this team and get them out for all these other games. Yeah. So I'm now sliding away from the players, and I'm increasingly, my bar is going towards this is a management problem.
Okay, I think it's time for me to go to the fridge and get some cheese.
The Cheese Trader, based on Grape Lane in York, is a cheese lover's paradise. Home to some wonderful specialty cheeses, relishes and chutneys, and also with a fantastic street food menu. Try their loaded fries or posh cheese on toast. It'll be the best you've ever had. Owned by Forest fan Stu Freestone, the Cheese Trader proudly sponsors Talking Reds. Quote Talking Reds every time to get 10% off your order. The Cheese Trader and Talking Reds, the perfect cheesy mix.
You know what to do, people. Stu Freestone, our friend and sponsor. It's a discount you can get every time when you quote Talking Reds. 10% off every order. Details it in the bio. Back to the Premier League on Sunday. We go to Brentford, one of our traditional bogey teams, some might say. Last two outings in the Premier League have been the win against West Ham at the London Stadium and that draw earned against the league leaders at the City Ground last weekend. So we want to try and maintain, obviously, going unbeaten into what, on paper and in the footballing world, looks like a tricky game. I had Brentford nailed on to get relegated this season. I've got egg on my face there because they've been performing well. And maybe that just goes to show the infrastructure at Brentford is really their key driving factor. You know, their management, recruitment and succession planning seems to be really elite level. But credit to Keith Andrews, credit to the Brentford team that have put themselves into the top 10 and at one point top 5. So it's about going to Brentford and picking up at least a point. And is it now Richard must pick up a point is more important than anything else, or must not lose is more important than anything else? Which one is it? Must not lose or must pick up a point at least?
Well, I think it's a must pick up a point because we can't keep losing points and expect other teams around us to play poorly or to not get results as well and hope for that. That's taking it out of our hands too much. I think we have to go into this with the intent. We just basically have to say whatever we did against Braga, let's do the opposite. Let's just flip the script as much. I know that's easier said than done. That's not as quite as it's oversimplifying it. But invariably, I think that when you have the guys that you trust and it should be playing at the level that they should, especially in attacking sense, to your point, Greg, because some of the defenders that Raf has brought up didn't play. But I'd say it's a must get a point because for two reasons. One, because we need it clearly to continue to maintain some level of safety, but it's also about getting us moving back in the right direction, because what we don't want is this to now be a matriculation into multiple losses in a row, because that's just going to continue to put more pressure on each individual on the pitch, but especially on the coaching staff. And so I think we're going to have to, just for positive momentum in general, that's where that has to go. And especially in an unexpected situation. But again, as we always say, this is the thing. I leave that match thinking everything is crap and we're in serious jeopardy, to like, I can see us going into and winning the damn game, because that's what we do. Right. And so it's just like, exactly. That's what I'm saying. So I think,
man.
Exactly. So I hope that's true, because at least in this instance, I'll take that, because that's a positive step forward. But yeah, we have to get a point and a good performance in order to, I think, put ourselves in position to go into Ferencváros and have any chance of winning that game. Because if we lose again, I wouldn't be surprised if we go and lose in Ferencváros at home.
The argument, or not the argument, the debate has been, how much do we focus on the Europa, given that the Premier League is so vital and getting points there? So is it, just quickly back on last night's game, is it any surprise that you make the changes he made? None of us were surprised at that, because ultimately we've got Brentford coming up, followed by Palace, followed by Leeds, followed by Wolves. We've got 4 games here, Brentford, Palace, Leeds, Wolves, in the Premier League, that could define our season in a nutshell. Because if we have a favourable run of results against those 4 teams, I think that could guarantee us safety. It's as simple as that. We're playing against a Palace team that are in turmoil, because the club's in turmoil. Gear's going, Mateta wants out, the manager's leaving, and all the rest of it. You got a Leeds team that are still down the bottom with us, albeit they've picked up remarkably well a set of performances and results. Won't be easy to go to Ellen Road, but if we can win that game, it may well be by that point we can overtake them. And then we play a Wolves team that, again, have looked better, but are still rooted to the bottom of the table. Start with a win, or a point at least at Brentford, Raf. It could be defining, couldn't it?
Yeah, the way that I was looking at it was, actually, I wanted us to go stronger in Europe and not have 2 extra games that we needed to play. But there is a method to the madness of why Dyche has probably done what he has done, even though it doesn't sit well with me, but fair play. Brentford, I don't see this as a game where we need to actually get points out of it. It's the 3 afterwards, which are more feasible and more likely to get a larger points haul from. Yes, Elliot, all games are winnable, and there's no reason why we can't beat Brentford. But just a percentage likelihood, it's those 3 games after Brentford. So for me, I don't want panic if we don't win at Brentford. But this is also why that last game yesterday has had a bit of an annoying impact. Mojo's down. The Wrexham game, right? We lost it, but the first team players came on and played really well, and we were on an uptick when we came out of that. This game, they came on and nothing happened whatsoever. So now we really need a positive result out of Brentford to stop the rot. Not necessarily for Premiership points per se, but a vibe, mojo, team unity, and getting that dressing room back to the place that it really should be, and was the reason our DNA was so strong last season, was that dressing room. Harsh, I'm going to say it, Dyche has tried to divide the dressing room by literally publicly lamping some of the players, which I called it at the time. I thought he can play that card once. Is it going to work? We've now got a bit of a problem, because for some of those players, it did not work. And so where do we now go from here in terms of how the players feel about him? And, players can be defensive about the others. If you've made bonds over the last 6 months with some of the other players, the first team may not take kindly to that either. I don't know. I'm not a player. I'm not an ex-player. But Sam on Forest Focus was kind of along my lines going, punchy him coming out publicly. I'm not sure this is going to end well, as it were, kind of paraphrasing a bit. But yeah, so I don't know. But for that, sorry, it's a long-winded way, but a point is actually critical for the dressing room rather than for the table.
Well, and Greg, to your point, real quick, I think you're right. I mean, if you look at Leeds, for example, they got Everton away, Arsenal at home, they play us at home, then they go away to Chelsea, then they go away to Villa, and then they're home against Man City. We have to take advantage of that section with our fixtures as well. And then you've got, because West Ham has got Sunderland at home, Chelsea away, Burnley away, Manchester United home, and then Bournemouth at home. So there's kind of a smattering of ease. teams that you would hope that they should put a performance in against, and other teams where they probably will get beaten by. But again, to your point, this is a very, I didn't even think about in those terms. So kudos to you for bringing that up, because that is a stretch that we should be taking advantage of.
And I think it's really important that the players notice that as well. And there's so much talk again about the management. I mean, in our comment section, thank you so much to everybody for jumping in with your thoughts. It's really important to us to see and read. If we don't put everything on screen, it's because we're limited with time, but we are reading them. I can see a lot of people are saying they just want Deitch out now. I've got to be honest with you, I don't want that, only because I just think that would be suicidal. I just don't think that at this stage in the season, changing the manager again is the answer. We've already had such turmoil that I just don't know who would come in at this stage, and it won't be this stage, it would be 3 games time stage, at that stage, to actually make a difference of any kind. So I do think the management have got a lot of looking in the mirror to do, and I think they've made mistakes. But ultimately, I think the players and the squad as a whole have to step up so much more than they are. We were feeling pretty positive about things on Sunday when the 3 of us did the Arsenal review, because we'd seen us get a point and thinking, okay, right, we're unbeaten in 2 Premier League games. But Raf's right, surely last night will kind of like have an impact on them mentally. But will it? A new face is arriving at the City Ground, yet to be unveiled. I think he had to be registered by midday today in order to be eligible to play. This is the Talking Reds starting 11. Put it on screen that we would go with. And so it looks like this, which is Matt Sells in goal. It's the back 4 you'd expect of Nico Williams, Ola Aina in the fullback role, Mirelo Milenkovic. We're saying we would like to see 4-3-3. So that's Dominguez, Sangare, and Anderson in the midfield. Away at Brentford, that could be absolutely crucial. And then a front 3 with Hudson-Odoi back on the left, Gibbs White moved out to the right-hand side, and new signing Lorenzo Luca going straight into the starting 11, pending his registration in time. My view is that if he's registered in time, just get him in the team. Because ultimately, I just am not convinced that Dan Ndoye is the right person to be playing that number 9. Last night showed me that. He didn't get into the box anywhere near enough. It may well be Taiwo Awoniyi that plays, because he possibly might be the only fit person. But it could well be that we are looking at a new signing coming in to start for us. Richard, can you make a case for any other player in the squad getting a start ahead of any of those players there? Maybe Hutchinson, I suppose. Go on.
Yeah, I think you're going to need a little bit more savvy. I mean, I understand Gibbs White's not, he's blown hot and cold all season long, and he was hot for a few games, and now he's gotten cold, a bit cold again. But I can almost make a case for Hutchinson a little bit, just because I think if you want someone with a little bit more adeptness on the ball, you want someone to kind of create more challenges for their left back, which I think in hindsight, and compared to the rest of their defensive back line, that left back's probably the weakest of those. And so maybe there's opportunities to exploit that with Hutchinson. And one thing we know he will do, and I'm not promoting this idea because we've all seen it not work, but with a 6'7" striker, at least he can cross the ball, and he's shown moments to be, he's got a decent cross on him. I'm not saying it's consistent yet, because he's still a young player and he's still adapting and he's still growing into his role and his place in the team. But I mean, maybe you can make the case with that, because I think face to face, taking on a defender, he's better than Morgan Gibbs White in that sense. But I would say that Morgan probably is a bit more consistent in terms of service, and you reduce the number of decisions he has to make in that role. I think Raf's talked about that quite a bit in terms of let that wand of a leg be utilized to its advantage, as opposed to expecting him to drive the attack, because he's just not been doing that. He's got 1 assist on the season, which is ridiculously poor for someone in his role as a 10. So you operate out that right. I just think that gives you the right balance, gives you all the veteran presence that you need. It gives you, I think, it gives you the opportunity to utilize Gibbs White in a way that it's probably been most effective to date in terms of how he's played in the season. You've got Callum, who's, I think, riding high right now. I think he looks like one of the best players we have on the pitch at the moment. So hopefully that back line gets back to what we're used to. I think they will. They're the kinds of players, I think, that recognize a poor performance and then make the adjustments and do better the next time out. So I have a lot of faith in that. We just got to use that midfield. Raf keeps talking about it. They talked about force focus. Everyone's talking about it. Utilize that midfield. Let Sangari do the deep work and then provide those precision passes that he can do, and let Elliot Anderson. And this is the other thing. Brentford are terrible at defending shots from outside the box. So having a Sangari in the pitch really makes a difference. But I would say Hutchinson's the only one I could possibly point to as someone you might add. But I think the way that we have it set up is actually the way we need to do it.
Quick question for you then, because it was pretty much aligned on what the limit is. Murillo wasn't on the bench. He did travel. I thought I saw him in training stuff on the side. Yeah. So if he's not fit and we don't want to risk him, who do you have paired with Milenkovic for this game?
Well, I wouldn't play Morato, but that's who'll play.
No.
I would
put Cunha. I would put Cunha in there personally, but that's,
yeah.
Okay, so this is where it's really interesting, and we're talking about succession planning very, very quickly because we've got to get just very quickly look at Brentford. But some people are going, look, Jay Cunha, you play him, but he's right-footed. Morato's left-footed, and you want a left-footed left centre-back to slot into there. For me, I just played the best player in that centre-back pairing. And for me, I think you put Cunha on over Morato for this game, if that's the case. But for me, that's probably the one talking point rather than anything else. I also think it's a bit harsh on McAtee, who is now actually starting to have an impact. Him off the bench, maybe to prove the fact that he can carry it on. Hutch to come on and make massive impact. Again, who are the players that are going to come off the bench to raise the tempo? Right? I don't think McAtee raises tempo. Hutch raises tempo. But let's see where we get to. I think it's strong unit, all power with the 4-3-3.
Yeah, well, look, we're all hoping Murillo will play. There's a chance that he might not because of the knock. There's also a chance that Igor Jesus is fit to play and he plays, and so we'll have to wait and see. But ultimately, we are guessing, but we're picking the same names. No one's really staking their claim to kind of rock that starting 11. But you're right, having weapons off the bench is crucially important. Hutch has shown he can do that. Even Dan and Doy off the bench might, jizz things up a little bit. He did come on against Arsenal, and I thought he was all right when he came on. Looked quite lively. Oh, okay, right. We've talked about how important the game is going to Brentford. We've talked about the necessity to try and pick up a point. We've talked about the forthcoming games for Forest, and we know that West Ham and Leeds have got fixtures of a mixed bag maybe as well for West Ham, and Leeds look like they've got a tough run. So we're going to try and capitalise, but Brentford are absolutely no pushovers. Here with 3 minutes on Brentford is Raf the Random Pundit.
Yeah, cheers, guys. Right. So, yeah, from what looked like they were going to be down and out, their stability is brilliant. They're basically they're at seventh, and they're only 3 points off fourth of Liverpool, right? That's how well they're flying. You look at their last 6 games. Yes, they lost their last game against Chelsea, but before that, they beat Sheffield Wednesday. They beat Sunderland 3-0. They beat Everton 4-2. They drew with Tottenham, scored a no-score draw. And they beat Bournemouth 4-1. I know Bournemouth are no shakes at the moment, but still, right? So they're riding a bit of a crest of a wave. If we have a look at what their their real strengths are, what we need to be worried about is them counter-attacking us. Once we've got and broken on them, if we lose the ball by doing a flick, a trick, or not being very good with looking after the ball, they will counter us and probably score. Right. Now, interestingly, what does Dyche like? Getting down the wings, swinging in crosses. Well, actually, they are not very good at defending against attacks down those wings. So if we have a look at their teams, Coyote and Aya on the wings, we can get at those fullbacks. And that is what we potentially will find some joy. If we have a look at their team, it's no surprise when anyone knows anything. If you play FPL, Thiago is on fire up front. He will come on to have a look how many goals he's got, but it's absolutely insane how well he's come on. But again, he's not a new signing. He's been there for over a year. Him and Shada did nothing last year whatsoever. They're in year 2 and they've come alive, right? So for everyone that's panning our players, not everyone that's absolutely awesome comes alive in the first year. So Sharda on the left-hand side as well, absolutely awesome. But you cannot forget, Yarmouk's been pretty solid in the middle. Guittara on the left as well. Henderson's coming back from injury, but should be back. So very quickly, go on to the second of 2 slides, and we keep it to time. Again, set pieces, they're not bad at. They've got 5 from set pieces, but they're big. They feast on open goals, 15 from them. Us, they concede pretty much most of their goals from open play. And I do think Callum Hudson-Odoi will have a good time against that back line if we can feed him, which would be really, really good. Where are their goals coming from? Thiago, 16 goals already this season. He is on absolute fire. Locking him down, and the centre-back pairing, whoever they might be, need to deal with him. And that is the majority of the threat gone. But you cannot forget against Sade, that will be the right-hand side. So Ola needs to have a far better game. He's still coming back. He's probably still rusty, but he really needs to have a good game against Sade and lock that down. The assists come from all over the park. Janelt, Sharda, Henderson, Damsgaard. Damsgaard's only got 3 assists, so he's not exactly playing lights out like we saw last season, but you've still got to respect him because he can pull the strings. They haven't really got any relevant injuries. Henderson's coming back, probably. They're very split left and right, 36 left, 37 on the right of their attack, 26 through the middle. So you can't favour one side or the other. And there's no real particular where they're shooting from. It's quite normal when you look at 23 outside the box, 65 in the 18-yard box, and 12% in that 6-yard box. What I would say is that 6-yard box is a touch lower than some of the other very poachy types, but they're definitely getting shots off in the box.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much. That was absolutely spot on. Oh dear, God, I'm out of breath. I'm out of energy. My brain's frazzled. One thing we didn't talk about quickly, just very, very quickly, was that red card for Anderson last night. I mean, that obviously was a bit of a random one. I mean, I can only, in my head, I've got all kinds of things that he was saying to the referee. Why, hey, man, your mum's a beep, insert expletive, rather. But he won't play against Ferencváros, which is probably a good thing because we want to keep him rested. So we'll talk about the Ferencváros game. Obviously, once we get into next week, all eyes on the Premier League. I will be at Brentford now on Sunday. All of a sudden, managed to squeeze myself along with Orlando and my wife because it's Orlando's birthday on Sunday. So hopefully the team can come through for him. Let's have score predictions, please. Over to you, Raf.
Oh, do you know what? We probably will lose, but I just need to get some positivity back into my soul. So I'm going to go for a 1-1.
1-1. Richard?
Yeah, I will see your 1-1, and I'll invoke the comment from Chris Aylmer to me, even though we both agreed last night was atrocious. He said, you still got to believe, mate. You got to believe. So I'm going to believe, and I'm going to believe that we go 2-2. We actually get 2 goals. Because I think there's definitely opportunities there, but will we take them? Hopefully we will, but I'm gonna say 2-2.
Anything you guys want to add before we close, Raf?
Yes, positivity. What might have been the method behind the madness? Very, very quickly, and it's how the fixtures rack up when you overlay them of Europe. Now we've got playoffs, by the way, as well with everything else. So not ideal that we've got 2 other games, but we seem to be prioritizing as we're going into this Brentford, Palace, Leeds, Wolves zone, right? Prioritize the Prem, right? And actually, last 2 games, it's been all right. Got 4 points, played well against Arsenal. Okay, so positivity. If we get head back in the Premier League, maybe we'll be all right. The playoffs, which it looks odds on that's exactly where we're going to be. It's just who we play. That is in the middle of Liverpool at home, Brighton away, those 2 fixtures, and the one afterwards when we're really knackered, if we play our first team throughout all of those 4 games, is Man City away. So at that juncture, I think it might be we actually put out second string teams for those 3 fixtures. I know everyone Premier League. It's all about the Premier League. Those fixtures are less likely to get points than the ones we've got coming up in the next 4 games. So we go strong for those 4 games in the Premier League. Then we switch mindset and put the first team out for the playoffs and get through. We need the money. We need to progress for the money.
Hitting the table, it makes the microphone.
Sorry, I'm very animated today.
That's how passionate he is. He's willing to accept that.
I apologize to everyone today. I've been really animated. I'm probably still got some anger from yesterday, so I've not been my positive level self whatsoever. It's just probably indicative of just about everyone else out there. So apologies.
No worries, buddy. No worries. Richard, anything to close on?
No, just you know what, guys, show up. Do the thing that you needed to do for the fans last night. Honor Steve Battlemuch, Emily Williamson, Emma, all the wonderful Dan, all the wonderful people who showed up last night. Let's give them something to cheer about again. Let's bring it back. I think we can do this. I understand it's not a flip of the switch, but I also believe that effort, commitment, desire is something you can choose. So I do believe we'll do that. I hope that's been the general trajectory of things. So I'm now feeling better. Thank you, Greg, for providing an environment where we could be cathartic and actually get back to a good headspace, because I'm actually in a much better place now than I was when I started the pod. So thank you, guys. Going
back to last night's game, Marine Boy says, my dad had a speed awareness course yesterday and said he actually enjoyed that more than the Forest match. He says that says it all. And in terms of going to Brentford on Sunday, Brucey says, taking your kid to Brentford for his birthday could be classified as child abuse. Yeah, there's that. That has crossed my mind as well. But we have broken our duck. We were at the Spurs game where we saw a win, and I was at the West Ham game where we saw a win. So we're going to go for 3 in a row games attended where we get a win. And my score prediction is, of course, a 2-1 victory for Nottingham Forest, because that's what it's got to be. My son is going to be turning 9. We're all going to be there. It's a new stadium for us, and the positivity is going to be back. So all you Reds now, your job, this is your job, is to get behind the team, whether it's online, whether it's in the stadium, whatever it may be. Get behind the team. You might not like the manager, but get behind the players, because they need us. They need us badly. And this team are in a fight. They're in a dogfight. And so let's remember that the Premier League was something we yearned for, and we're still there. Let's not lose out on that. We yearned for the chance of European football. But actually, maybe in reality, first time back in Europe after 30 years, maybe it was always going to be a little bit tougher than we thought it was going to be. Maybe actually, we're in the so-called better league. But these teams are used to playing in Europe. Braga play in Europe all the time. And other teams play in Europe all the time. Midtjylland play in Europe all the time. We haven't been. So maybe it's that kind of factor that comes into play as well. But then one thing that will never go away is our love for Nottingham Forest. So be loud, be proud. Come on, you Reds.
Come join Greg and Richard right here on Talk